Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Tonight was really an idea that kind of formed in my head when I made the decision that I would submit my application to become superintendent. I just want to give you just a brief insight into my thinking. So, I really believe that our public schools represent the purest form of democracy in our republic. And I love the fact that we have so much at stake as a community. I listened to a story the other day that was talking about what kids need. Thank you. As if it wasn't already enough pressure. What our kids need, and what this researcher was saying, and it was a psychological researcher, was saying is that kids need a community. They need a hedge of protection. They need people that are more interested in their safety and well-being and are willing to sacrifice for that. And so I really feel like that is a strong point in Grand County. It's one of the reasons that I want to be here, because I believe that this is a very family-oriented community. I believe that this community rallies, and I have seen it so many times, around the best interest of children. And I have heard through stories and examples and have seen things when people have gone through illness, when people have gone and suffered loss, that this community very much believes in the future, and they very much believe in our children. So, thinking of the role of superintendent, I feel very strongly that the schools should reflect the core beliefs, values, and mission of the community. And I believe that the core beliefs, values, and ideas and mission of Grant County people are among the best that I have ever encountered in all the places that I have lived or the districts that I have worked. So it's very important to me to say to you, welcome, and please share your ideas, thoughts, and concerns with us, because you will hear me say this over and over again. And I said this at a board meeting recently, I believe it was in May or April, and I believe this to my core: no one of us is smarter than all of us. And when we put our minds together and we find a real purpose and a real passion, and I can't think of one more worthy than our children, then I am convinced that the sky is the limit, and there is nothing that is impossible for us. I tell students, I have told students, both as principal at Mason Corinth and in this building, when I have my beginning and end of the year talk with them, that you're only limited by your imagination. And I truly believe that. So we have an opportunity, and I will tell you this, and I think it was a great opportunity. Our students are watching this unfold in real time. We have an opportunity to model, to teach, and to demonstrate how you become engaged, active participants in your community, how you come together to solve problems, how you work for the best interests of other people, and how we can do so, and even possibly not agree on every single item, but agree that we're going to move forward, and agree that things are going to get better. So that was kind of the motivation and the thinking that I had when I made the decision to apply. We had a board retreat, we discussed it, the board was in full support of it. I do want to qualify that tonight is not a board meeting. We do have board members present, but because it's not a board member meeting, they will not be speaking. My vision for this is that I will facilitate this. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the process and what that will look like. So here's the process. Today, we're going to take a look at some numbers. And I will readily admit to you that I'm not an expert yet on these numbers. I've had access to them for a short while. I've done everything I can to study as much as I can. So if you really press me on questions, I may have to tell you I have to get back to you. But I welcome the questions, and I welcome the opportunity to learn myself and then to follow up with you. But we're going to take a look at some numbers and some data and determine this is not judgment, it's not condemnation, it's information. So we're going to determine where we are, and then we're going to allow you an opportunity to speak. So I appreciate your input. your comments that you want to share. I know that the board would appreciate the opportunity to hear you and understand that, again, I'll answer any questions that I can. My knowledge base right now is limited and well extensively by data. And I will be more than happy to follow up with you after I've had some time to research. And then at the very end of this, we have a survey. And part of that survey includes a question that allows you to share with us anything that you would like for us to know. And so I'll be sharing this information with the school board and my administrative team in central office, so you can know what I will see or will comment. I do understand not everybody is as comfortable to come forward and to address the crowd and to speak publicly. And so out of respect for that, we'll have a QR code and you can do that survey that allows you an opportunity to provide us with feedback. I want to gather as much feedback from the community as I can possibly do so that I can begin to start the process of informed decision making and strategic planning. Okay? So by the end of August, we will share the survey results for developed committees. By the end of December, we will determine our focus areas based on survey results and findings, and then we will begin to develop goals. By the end of February, we will develop action steps, establish timelines, and by the end of March, we will share a strategic plan with community, and then over the course of the next 3 years, we will monitor and adjust. It is important that we adjust. I remember the quote that somebody once said, that no good plan survives the first taste of battle, so you have to be willing to be adaptive and make adjustments along the way to best serve whatever the objective of those goals that have been determined. So, before we get into the data, I do want to share some processes that already exist. Every year, principals work and present to their site-based councils something called the Comprehensive School Improvement Plan. The district goes through that same process. It is the Comprehensive District Improvement Plan. There are certain mandates that we have to address in those plans that center around academic performance and climate and culture for students, their safety and culture. All of those plans are available for you to study. They are posted on our website and on school websites. So there are already processes that exist to tackle those things. When I think of a strategic plan, what I'm trying to do is not duplicate efforts, but identify areas that maybe wouldn't be a part of that school or district improvement plan that could give special attention or special focus on areas outside of what's required in those plans. So make sure that if you're interested in those things, that you take a look at it. I will also say this, and people hear me say this all the time. When we think of schools, there's one thing that we should be experts in. There's got to be one thing that we do better than any other entity or institution, and that is help students learn. That is our business. We are focused on student learning. Now, there are lots of peripheral factors that can make that more efficient, that can expedite it, that can make that go more smoothly, and that can make the impact of that learning last longer. But I will say that that is our duty under the law. That's why public school exists, is for student learning, and that is reflected in just the core piece of that is reflected in the CDIP and CSIP. But as I said, there are some other things that impact that process. Okay. So here's what we're going to take a look at tonight, by the numbers. We're going to take a look at some student achievement data, some staffing data, some budget and finance data, and some community involvement data. And again, this is not condemnation. This is just information so that as you provide input, you've been provided with at least some baseline data. And I think it will be important that in successive years, we are able to point to see if we're moving in the right direction or not. This is the expectation that we have placed on teachers in classrooms, and it's the expectation, I feel like, even from a central office lens, that we need to be modeling for the district. So that's my purpose for that. So, if you go to the Kentucky Department of Education website, they do something called the school report card, and it looks like this. This is for the 22-23 school year. We have designations that are broken down by color, and here is a broad overview of where we are in the district. I wish I could tell you that the way that these designations are determined is simple and easy to understand, but unfortunately I can't say that to you in all honesty. However, I do think one thing is clear. There's motivation on this slide alone. There's motivation to develop a strategy. There's motivation to say that we can improve and that we can do better. So, if we drill down a little bit and we take a look at, just say, reading data. This line up at the top represents the proficient, distinguished, the top two designations of our elementary students. And then we have middle school and high school. The concerning line for me is the bottom represents the novice students. And so, if you take a look at that, one thing as a principal that I was always concerned with, and I'm sure other principals here tonight are concerned with, is how do we reduce that novice rating and get kids across the threshold and move kids up, right? We want to do better. We want our students to achieve better. But this is where we are right now. And just so you know, so that I don't spend all night up here speaking, we're going to publish these slides after the second town hall so that you will have access to them so that you can see them. I know that they're not easy to read, but you can get some kind of broad ideas. Here's our math data, again, elementary, middle, and high school. And this is a 35. And then down at the high school, the novice rate goes just past 40. This is our college and career readiness data, and it goes back to 2021. So this is the percentage of students that were deemed college and or career ready out of the total number of graduating seniors for that year. So in 2021, just looks like 175-ish was the number, 150, I'm sorry, was the number. 2022, probably looking around 130-ish. 2023 looks like about 168, 170. 2024, I had it in my mind because I know the data was fresh on my mind, 173. I will tell you that it took a ridiculous amount of time at senior awards to recognize all the students that were college and career ready, and that's a wonderful problem to have. So it was a good thing that we have increased. Now, just for clarification, a college rating is determined, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. If a student has met that benchmark in one of the ACT areas, and then career ready has to do with the completion of pathway, a passing of an end of program assessment, something that signifies readiness in a career field. And then we have students that were both college and career ready. Here is our graduation rate percentages from 2019 up to 2023. Again, we were about 92.5% in 2023, and then 2022 was our lowest, and we were just below 90%. One thing that isn't represented on the school report card is something that the Board of Education and Mr. Morgan worked on years ago, and that is a profile of a graduate, and I'm not sure everybody is aware of what this is. So they identify what would be the characteristics of a Grant County student that would represent what we would want them to walk away from us and enter into life with, what qualities or attributes. So SUCCEED is the acronym for self-aware, understanding of others, competent, communicative, ethical, engaged, and determined. And you might ask, how do you know that students have obtained these attributes. We do have a senior defense program that has been going on for the past several years. Some of you may have served on those panels in which seniors in front of a panel of a community member, an administrator, and possibly a teacher will identify two of these characteristics and then provide a defense of how they have evolved throughout their education with respect to those characteristics. And they'll give us a plan A and a plan B of what is their plan after high school. One thing that I always share with students here at the high school is by the time that you leave us, it is so critical that you have a plan. That plan could be more schooling. That plan could be an entrance into the workforce, or that plan could be entrance into military service. I share with them, and I'll share with you, I have found over the course of my career, the biggest hurdle for students is getting started. And so we feel very strongly that if we can help them develop a plan and coach them through what those steps will look like and get them on the path, then that student is way better equipped and more likely to succeed. And it doesn't matter for me, it's not so much whether or not they stick to the plan. That plan can evolve, but at least the fear of the unknown has been tackled, and they have a framework by which they can become self-directed people. And then here are our attendance rates. So this chart does two things. It informs us of our attendance percentages as a district over the past several years. And if you look at the gray bar, it also informs us of our student enrollment. So you can see that student enrollment has declined pretty significantly since 1819. I think we are projected at around 3,100 for this upcoming school year. We, of course, want to make sure that we are reaching all students that we can best serve, and that is a family-by-family determination, but we want to make sure that the work that we're doing meets the needs of the students that live here in Grant County. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about our staffing numbers. So, had Human Resources develop this for us tonight. When we talk about administrators and supervisors, that includes superintendents, assistant deputies, directors, directors of all the entities that we have to monitor. A lot of times people don't know that some director positions are mandated by law because they're attached to dollars that have to be monitored, and there has to be a dedicated person that is attached to that. So we have 14 in that category. You see certified other, you may wonder what that means. That includes like speech therapists, occupational therapists, counselors, curriculum specialists. So people that hold the certification to be able to do their job, but they're not in the classroom teaching. So across the district, we have 34 of those. 216 certified teachers. Child nutrition is food service, 41 employees in that sector. Maintenance and facilities is 43. Other, this includes administrative assistants, secretaries, those types of positions throughout the districts across 7 buildings, really, if you count transportation and maintenance as its own building that has to have some administrative support staff put in place. Paraprofessionals, that involves our instructional assistants, and then principals and assistant principals is 12, and across the district in transportation is 40, and that total is 503, so that's a breakdown. Here is our years of experience. So if you take a look at this chart, again, this is 22-23 data. 69% of our teachers had less than 10 years of experience, and then 18% 10 to 19 years, just 3% over 30 years, and God bless you, and 10% 20 to 29 years. Now, teacher turnover is defined. Anybody that leaves their position as a teacher in the district. It can be for retirement, it can be to move up out of the classroom into an administrative role. It could be to leave a building to go to a different building. It could be leave a building to go outside of the district. It could be to leave teaching and after 1 year or before the year is over. So this is a comparison of total number of teachers reported. The red is the turnover numbers. And so it's pretty clear. I like this graph a lot because I think it's really clear. I will also say you can drill down to more specific numbers. If you go back to that school report card, if you go down, it talks, I think it's staff, faculty and community. You can click on that and then you can pick your year at the top for whatever year you want. I believe it goes back to 2018 and it will give you specific percentages. You can click on any county public school in the state and you can see what other districts are too. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about our community partners and community involvement. So we have 7 mental health agencies that we have a memorandum of understanding, that's what an MOU is, in 23-24, and we have 10 therapists returning for the 24-25 school year. Here is a graph representing the percentage of students served by social workers, school counselors, and school psychologists in 23-24. This is 100%. So we see in August, September, and February, February is a tough month, 100% of our students had some interaction with somebody in this domain. And all the percentages are high except for May, and that's what we know is shorter month as well. Parent and community involvement, we had, I know these numbers are a little bit hard to see, 5,627 volunteer hours, 2,170 volunteers, 1,681 program hours across the district. Now, everybody's favorite topic, budget and finance. All right, so this is a comparison of spending per pupil. And I think it's one of the easiest ways to understand the complex mechanism. But at the state, when you spend money, you have to code every item that you spend money on, including your staff salaries and benefits, health insurance, retirement, everything that you spend money on within a school district, you have to code it. Then that gets audited, but the state has access to those codes, and then the money that you spent, and they develop a report for every district that breaks down a per pupil spending. So if we're talking about student support spending, we are the red, and here is the state average, and you will see we were right near $1,000 per student. So you might ask, what is student support? Well, that includes any special occupational services, any health need, any extra above and beyond normal classroom instruction is considered student support. Instruction spending includes teacher salaries and people that are teaching in classroom salaries and classroom supplies and resources. Here's where we fall in Grant County. And so going across, that's roughly about $8,500 per student, it looks like, or closer to $9,000. In case you can't see, this is Newport Independent. And over here we have Scott County. But I think most of that should be pretty legible. Instructional staff spending per pupil, that's broken down even further than the instruction that I reported on earlier. Here's where Grant County is. This is Ludlow, Bellevue, Southgate, and then Owen, and here is the state average. This is available on the school report card as well. District admin spending per pupil. This is the 14 positions that I referenced on the slide earlier. This is Southgate, Newport. You can't see the two counties that are to the right of Grant County Kenton County and Scott County, and state average is here. Now, just a little bit of information. Again, I'm not an expert, but remember when I said that some of those director positions are mandated? So you have to have them whether you have 100 students in your district or you have 30,000. So some of the bigger counties like Scott and Kenton, they satisfy all those needs, but they have a student population of 12 to 15,000, I believe, in both of those districts. And I'm not saying that to influence you, I'm just making you aware. School administrator spending per pupil, this is the administrative team. Grant County is sandwiched in between Pendleton and Scott and below the state average. Covington surprised me. It's the one that's on the far left. Business office spending per pupil, this is the district finance and the human resource office over at the board office. This is where we are in comparison to these other districts, and we just picked kind of regional schools that to report out on. So here's the state average, and then you see where Grant County is. Plant operation, this has to do with running buildings. We are commensurate with state average, right on point. Again, we do have 7 buildings. Pupil transportation, we are below the state average. I will say that most of these districts have a lot of self-transport students. A lot of those are the kind of community schools up in northern Kentucky. And total expenses per pupil are spending. Okay. Now, here's an opportunity for public comment. I'm going to come down here and turn the mic on, and so it's not awkward. I want to sit, and if you want to just direct your comments at me, I am more than happy to listen. But I was able to watch the fiscal court meeting the other night. I think their system is very good, which was just kind of a volunteer basis. And we want to open it up, realize that if you're not comfortable doing that, you have an opportunity in the survey. But otherwise, I want you to feel comfortable to come up and provide feedback and make public comment. Again, the board members are here. They're not going to respond. This is not a special call meeting, but they will hear your comments. We're recording this so that we will have an archive of it. So we encourage you to do that. If you were at that board meeting last time, you were at the last board meeting, it was June, our PDA, Eli Anderson, spoke during public comment, and he and I have had a discussion, and so I think that he has some good information that he would like to share with you, and this was seemed to us the appropriate venue to share some good information. So I'm going to invite him to the podium. He'll be our first public comment. Alright, I need some technical assistance, buddy. I heard somebody, I think that was Mr. Nelson. Do I need to share? So, this is on this. How do you know? Remember when I said I was still learning? We have success.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for allowing me the time to speak about this topic. For those of you all that don't know, I'm Eli Anderson from Grant County PVA. I'm in charge to assess everything for tax roll cases. So basically, I'm the numbers guy that gives the numbers over to Frankfurt, that crunches the numbers that every taxing district will use for their tax base. So I'm going to use this time to kind of explain Grant County Schools' specific tax base and how that applies to everything that they've been going on financially. So the topic of discussion, I kind of covered the introduction, but we'll go over 3 items. One, disinformation and myths about the tax base. There's a lot of information that kind of floats around, so I kind of want to correct some of those statements. The second is the rise in property assessments and also seat funding. That's the huge portion of the schools. And then also, we can't talk about a problem without offering possible solutions on how to fix it. So the first topic is disinformation and myths about the tax base. So the first myth that I always hear that is always put around, it's almost always on social media, is that the ARC doesn't pay taxes. That's not correct. The ARC actually paid a total this past year of $915,487.03. That is real estate and tangible taxes. I'm not counting anything that my office doesn't have effect in, so this is just real estate and tangible. Specifically, Grant County Schools gets $459,839.62 of that amount. So they actually do pay theirs. And the schools are in a unique position on the tax bill because they get to keep all of that amount. Where the county and the city, because they did to try to entice the ARC to come here, they gave what was called a TIF zone. So they have to give back a portion of what they received. So for example, for lack of numbers, the county receives $100,000 from the ARC. They have to turn around and refund $75,000 of that back. So the county only gets about 25% for what they received to entice the ARC to come here. The reason why we shouldn't spread disinformation about the ARC, it's not that we want to demonize the ARC or anything like that. It's simply straightforward. The organization that owns ARC, Answers in Genesis, they have a tax exempt arm, and that is the Creation Museum. In Boone County receives no property taxes on the Creation Museum. So at any time that the ARC wants to, they could go tax exempt, and that $459,000 that the school gets, all of a sudden they're not going to get. And then all the assessment that you use for the ARC, and all of a sudden my office, we have to spread that around to the rest of the tax base because that's how state statute works. Anytime you have a hole, you have to spread that around. So basically the school would get credit for it, and then we have to turn around and take that assessment and apply it countywide. So we don't want to necessarily just say, hey, they're not paying taxes or they need to pay more or anything like that. We kind of want to be friendly with them. Not that we should be intimidated or be held hostage, but just recognize at any time if things go south, they could always not pay a dime. So specifically, the ARC is also the highest assessed property in Grant County with the main parcel that they have, of course, where the boat is and all the other attractions. And that's $75.6 million worth of assessment. Yes, go ahead.
Like you were up 350,
Mhm.
out of that 75 million, what is the excess tax value that the county, puts up itself, collect out of that 75 million?
Well, first of all, my office doesn't get anything out of that, so we're totally separate. You have the sheriff's office gets their typical 2% collection.
Which is now going to be tax.
No, that, you're talking about occupational taxes. The
Or
R,
$75 million that generated.
well, the total, yeah, so the county gets 100,000, but then they have to turn around and refund 75,000 of that. So the county gets about $25,000 for it, because that was the incentive that the city and the county agreed to put that in a TIF zone.
So their assessed property value is 75 million, whereas I'll shoot mine for say it's 100 million. I'm paying $1,000 on $100,000 75. I won't break it in 12, that's 10%, right?
Well, your tax bill is a little bit higher than $1,000.
I'm just using it as some percent, but that's
Yeah.
10%.
Correct.
75 million is generated 7.5 million.
No, so you're looking at 10% of the overall total. When you look at the tax bill, 10% of 100,000 would be 10,000. So yours is actually, you'd be 1% of 100,000.
Why is
So-
it one?
No, no, no.
Pretty short of money in the county.
Correct. Correct.
Now the school's up to get more.
Well, you have to look at it too, the school's tax, everybody has the tax base, and we'll cover and we'll get into that. But each taxing district has its own set of obligations that it has to do, right? So the schools have to maintain and educate and transport and feed and everything their students. The county has to provide services, maintain roads, etc. Health department, theirs, library, theirs, etc. So each taxing district has their own litany of what they have. No problem. The other thing, so myth and fact, bourbon barrel warehouses. That's another one. So everybody's like, well, they're paying more than what they should, or they're paying everything that they are. Technically, again, no, they're not. So they don't pay real estate property taxes or tangible taxes. Specifically, MGP warehouses, because they have a leasehold agreement with the city of Williamstown. The city did a leasehold to entice them to come here. They don't pay real estate property taxes because bourbon is a protected class in the state, kind of like horse racing. They don't have to pay tangible. The only person that collects on that is the state. So you can kind of see how, where people think there's growth really coming in on it, but really when you get into the details, the money's not there. So the only thing that the barrel warehouses will pay is that per bourbon barrel tax. And that's slowly going to be starting phased out by 2030. Just to kind of recap that phase out because of House Bill 5 that went into effect January of this year. We'll start phasing that out starting in 2026 to 2039. So the bourbon barrel warehouses that we have in the county that pay those per barrel tax by 2039 will be the last, and it will be a depreciated amount. So it slowly stair steps down the revenue. So now we're going to talk about the main piece of it, the rise of property assessments and the corresponding effect that you see from it. So if you kind of can look, this right here, this table gives you a snapshot of what the overall assessment for Grant County Schools specifically, what their tax rate and the funds that it generated for property taxes. So starting in 2018, the reason why I use that is that's when I took office in December of 2018. So I can talk about those numbers specifically. Anything before that, I really can't. So if you look, its total overall has increased significantly. So everybody knows we're in a real estate boom, and the numbers reflect that. So in 2018, it was a little over $992 million total tax base, which brought in by the effective tax rate a little over $5.6 million. You fast forward to today, 2024, they have an almost $1.4 billion tax base. With, if they keep the same tax rate as last year, those can fluctuate. They can choose to increase it, decrease it, keep it the same. but that would generate $7.8 million in local funds. So you look at it and say, okay, that's a good thing, right? As values increase, that's more revenue, tax revenue, for the districts to be able to use. But that's not all of the metric for the school districts. So if we look at it even more specifically and break down those overall assessments, now you'll start to see the real problem that we have in Grant County specifically. 2020 through 2024, I've got them broke down. The vast majority of our tax base is on those properties that are less than 10 acres. Those are your residential class. So 2020, that number was $609 million. Now fast forward today, it's $764 million. So the vast majority of the growth has come on the residentials. Your farms have grown, but they haven't grown at the same rate. Then you look at the commercial. This is what kind of sets the tone for other districts. So you look at commercial in 2020 is 253 million, now it's 319. So if you look, over 50% is always residential. And we're fighting to try to keep those others and trying to get commercial up. That way, it's more revenue in. So for example, your commercial, that's your Dana, that's your Napoleon, that's your Kim Steel, that's your IMI plant. Those, what separates us from, say, Boone County, is Boone County, the vast majority of theirs is on the commercial side. They have the airport. They have the Amazon factory. So it kind of shows you, break down into this and say, the vast majority of the taxes that is collected for the schools are on residentials, disproportionate. So just kind of as a snapshot, since 2018, the total overall real estate assessment has increased $380 million for Grant County Schools tax base. That equates to about $2.1 million of additional revenue from 2018. There's the other slice of that would be your motor vehicle, tangible utilities, and franchise bills. Franchise bills are your centrally assessed bills that Frankfurt has total control over. So that would be like the railroad, things of that nature. So much of the total school district's budget is really coming from state and federal money. So you've got, yes, property taxes plays its piece, but the vast majority of everything is really coming from the state. And that brings us to seed funding. So there are several different funding mechanisms with the state for whatever purpose that it has. But seed funding is your major formula. Basically, this is what equals the playing field between those districts that have money, such as Boone County, and counties like us, that's Grant County, it's more rural, residential. So that formula seeks to even it out. So to kind of give you a snapshot of this, this was from the Department of Revenue. You have the specific year, you have the seat funding, the net general, but I'm really going to focus on the seat state amount. And then that's the report. So from 2020 fiscal year to 2022 to 2023 fiscal year, you'll notice that the seat state amount increased over time. So it went from 11.3 million roughly to about 12.5 million. Slight increase from 21 and 22 fiscal year to 2022, 2023. Then you get to 2023, 2024, it actually decreased. And what's forecast for 2024 to 2025, those numbers haven't been finalized, so it's just forecast numbers. It will go down again to 10.9 million. So if you notice what's going on with the state, because we're seeing assessments increase, the state, it's like a teeter-totter. So you can kind of see, it's not a dollar for dollar match, but it will slowly try to even itself out, because as assessments go up, the state looks at it and says, okay, you're a richer county now. You have a little bit more money. We can dial back the seat funding for your specific district. So because you're going to offset that with gains that you have in your property tax. But what we're actually seeing a little bit into this more, and you'll see it on the next table here specifically, is you'll see it where it's growing good, and all of a sudden it starts to flatline. So if you take a look at the total increase from real estate assessment, so that's your property taxes, you've got your seat state amount, Then you got the overall increase for the district. So 2020 to 2021, you saw a net increase between the two at 2.3 million. Now granted, that was a COVID year. You got 2021 to 2022, another increase of 1.3 million. In 2022, just a slight increase of 440,000. Then in 2023, you'll see a huge decrease of $628,711. And then this year, what's forecast, it basically, the real estate increase will be wiped out by the seat state amount, and it will only be a net of basically $6,300. So basically, evens it out. So basically, what we're seeing is, because how the seat formula is made, a huge proponent of that is enrollment. And as Mr. Moody talked about that, since 2018, 2019, in county schools, we've seen the enrollment drop. So with the state, how they made that mechanism to even out the playing field, they're saying how much money you're bringing in, plus how much we're giving you for the responsible students you're going to take care of. Well, since you're having less students to take care of, they're going to dial back the money even more than what it should have been. So really, instead of being able to have more money than you know what to do with, because the rise of property values and because of seat funding, they're dialing it back more than what it has. So we're truly in a unique position. Because we're growing as a county, we're having more houses in the county being developed, the property's worth more, but because we have less students coming in, the seat funding, which is the vast majority of the funding for the school, has dropped. So this leads me to the possible solution. So we kind of understand what the problem is. Now we need to say, okay, how do we fix this problem, right? The first one is to advocate for a cap for Airbnbs. Now, I'm not demonizing anybody that owns an Airbnb. You have the right as a business to make money in which way you see fit. But when you look at how Airbnbs pay compared to everybody else, then you'll see why this disproportionately affects school districts. So Airbnbs pay real estate property taxes just like everybody else. They pay a transient room tax. Schools don't get that. They pay an occupational license fee. School doesn't get that. Depending on the Airbnb and how it is made, tangible taxes should be owed, but very rarely do they do that, so you're not even collecting really on tangible tax like any other business that you would have. So the only thing the school district gets from Airbnbs, really, if you look at it, is real estate property taxes. That's it. For every one home that becomes an Airbnb, the school district loses motor vehicle taxes, so that's your cars under primary residence, your boats, everything. They lose that. They lose enrollment of kids. That's the big thing. And if you notice, from 2018, 2019, that's when it started dropping. And that's when it's really caught up with seat funding and has put us in this position that we have now. So we need to advocate for cap Airbnb because Grant County schools can't afford to lose revenue. They just can't. If you look at Airbnbs are costing them revenue in motor vehicles, enrollment of kids, people actively engage in school. So more Airbnbs, I loved how you had the volunteer and the volunteer hours on there, because more Airbnbs come, you're going to have less volunteers. You're going to need more volunteers, because then there's going to be less available to it. If the district does not advocate for a cap, they'll continue to see the enrollment drop, which negatively impacts seat funding. Yeah, the district needs to go to the cities and the county and say, this is what's going on. We can't have the adequate funding that we need for the kids in the county. We need to put a cap on it. And the school can leverage that in a number of ways. One, they're the county's largest employer. I believe it was 503 employees on the previous slide. Use that leverage. Because if this continues, the school's going to have to look at it and say, okay, county, we're going to have less employees. That's less occupational taxes you're going to be bringing in. So you can effectively leverage your position by saying, this is why we need it. We have to have this funding to keep up with the district and to be able to pay our teachers what we think it should be. Prediction as into like yeah. Well, what you would do is you'd say, okay, if you look at 2018 levels, and you say, what was the revenue that we had bringing in from cars? What was our enrollment like? So you can't put the genie back in the bottle, but what you can do is you can put a floor on it. So if you advocate for that, you can say, okay, we're not going to lose any more than what we had. So any potential future growth, for example, like the Telstar subdivision that they want to put in here at the beginning of Warsaw Road, or right across the street where they want to put in a subdivision, or right down the road where they want to put a subdivision, then you know all those houses, that's enrollment, that's car renewals. Those are what's going to get you back to where you were in 2018. So to put a number on it, I really don't have a number on that. But it's not going to cost you anything to advocate for. Well, the county will tell you there's roughly a little over 200 of them. I personally believe there's over 400 of them. Because you'll have those that do everything right, get everything licensed, go on Airbnb, so they have wait bookings. There are those that are seasonal. They will go on there. They will not get the licenses, and they'll go about it that way. So for me, it's hard to say, yes, we have 239, because just those are good characters that are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then there are those that will not do what they're supposed to be doing. So for me, I believe it's higher than that, just based on Airbnb's website and what we found by doing the office, by looking at, okay, here's this posting, here's this, they didn't get an occupational license. So they did not go through the steps.
Like actually the myth of Dry Ridge, City of Dry Ridge, or are they holding on Airbnb application?
Well, the city of Dry Ridge, I'll let them talk for themselves, but I know that they tried. I don't know if they actually completed that. I don't believe that they did. Nobody in the county has put a cap on it. I know in the cities that they maintain that and they run that. I know that the Dry Ridge tried to talk about it. I know Williamstown tried to, and they didn't. But again, nobody spoke out to what the negative side of having these go through.
You're talking about bringing in more subdivisions, bringing in more enrollment. What I noticed is a lot of these business people already in their homes. My interest, of course, having lived in, we have a large number of homeschool things. Is there any way that that is considered into enrollment?
At this point, yeah, at this point, there's nothing that the state would say, okay, we're gonna count that homeschooling, on your population. No, they don't do that. And that's the reason why I see funding's dropping. So not only do you have Airbnbs competing with, so you can ask any Frisbee coordinator in the district and they'll tell you, you can't find rental property in this place. Right? You can't buy an affordable house. So that competition has made it where it's harder. So when you have a family that's having hard times, even trying to find a replacement rental property for them, all of a sudden they're going to another county that they can get a rental place for their kids. So again, that just negatively impacts enrollment.
A lot of kids that when they move into this kind of family we're working for, is homeschooling.
Yeah.
A large number of people want to school.
And of course, I don't know if that's a fad or not. That's out of my depth. I do know that with COVID and everything going on, that affected how people view things and everything else. How much of that was homeschooling? How much more will they come back? I don't know. That's not necessarily for me to decide or anything like that.
One thing I'd like to ask about, you spoke earlier about the art could withdraw and go tax exempt. Do they feel like, or have you ever spoken to anyone, or has anyone ever approached the county that don't take away our employment opportunities or our workers to homeschool kids because we couldn't get a worker? I mean, it sounded kind of like earlier you left me thinking that there's a bad taste in the art's mouth and they're just waiting to pull the plug on that $100,000. Has anybody else got that exception or I don't wanna be threatened by somebody that created the Airbnb unchecked it. I mean, if it wasn't for the art, who would want an Airbnb in Grand County?
Yeah. And some of that's rise, the values of properties too, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, property is rising where it needed to rise for folks that line their pockets. But if you get out on a road that's still pretty rural, it still looks the same as it did in 1985. Junk cars sitting everywhere, places that are looking horrible, the whole nine yards. So, it's a lot to take in, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity, and I'm happy to hear that there'll be more of these, town hall opportunities, but it seems like a select few are making decisions for the whole entire county when it comes to money and everything else. Like I said, I'm not an Airbnb fan, I've actually had to stay in one, but, if we were to advocate, isn't that going to kind of make the art feel like they're being picked on by us? And then say, well, you know what, so we'll keep our 900,000, we'll just get back.
Well, not necessarily. If you notice, there's been more hotels built, right?
Yeah, but your last name gotta be Patel, hotel.
Well, they're not building the Hampton, so they're So, I mean, I get what you're saying, I completely do, but, it's one of those things, it's not that we should feel threatened by them, or that I feel that they could, at any time, but it's one of those, why poke a bear? Could it be that time I poke it and they don't do anything, or that time I poke it and that's enough, that's the straw that broke the camel's back?
Question here, so obviously we're looking at this, so we have the formula law. We're not going to rule out investment property. We don't have commercial upside. We're getting into residential, which is not really there. Now, who is our voice, obviously, for that? Because is that the judge executive, is that the county? Because that money is based on the seed formula, like Boone County doesn't get a lot of seed funds, they get all the commercial side. So, Franklin's not giving them the money, but now they're not giving us the money. Where's that money going?
That money's going to poor communities, such as Eastern Kentucky. You got like Emporia County is one of the poorest counties in the United States. But really, who controls that? That's your state representatives, right? That's like your state representative, your senator. Those are where your lobbying efforts, if you want to see formula change, and specifically change for us, that's who you need to start with.
But is that formula, like, is it reevaluated, like, every 5 years? Is there anything wrong with that? I can't imagine formula being blocked.
That's a question for them to ask, honestly. I mean, the formula, just like anything with the state, is complex, more probably complex than what it needs to be. But that would be something that the state would say, okay, this is what they do about their practice. Now, obviously, the formula's numbers change every year, right? So it goes on your enrollment, what's your overall assessment, everything that goes into play with that. So as far as the mechanism, I don't think that much changed, but I'll let the state definitively answer for that.
I mean, I'd like to see it, someone figures out, hey, you don't have to dish out this much here or here. We'll do more ourselves, use it somewhere else. That's all we're gonna get. I just didn't know if, our district has to fight for us, or there's a bigger voice for us. It's kind of just like the hey, this is hurting us. I just was curious as to how far up do they have to go to actually get things fresh.
Yeah, that'd be with your state representative and state senate. So really, us county officials, we don't have any say on the seat form.
But I thought, I didn't know the county had any buy-in.
Trust me, if we did, I'm sure Tabitha, Jacqueline, myself, Shauna, we'd all put our heads together and we'd find out something better than this. I can guarantee that.
Okay, I didn't know where that put off.
The second solution is definitely becoming more mobile, right? So of course you're advocating and becoming more vocal about your tax base. So any potential drop in your assessment to your tax base that directly impacts what you can do as a school district. So what you should be doing is looking out, are there any bad deals, right? So we talked about the TIF zone with the ARC. We talked about the bourbon warehouses. That's been a perfect one for the school district to say, whoa, wait a minute, we don't need this. Prime example of that was the Conrad Lane development. So you had bourbon barrel warehouses want to go on Conrad Lane, or a development of 144 homes around the lake. That projected to be about $78 million worth of assessment. So that will fill your hole with ARC right there. That's enrollment with kids, that's car renewals, that's something that you definitely need to be there saying, hey, this is a good thing, this is gonna help us, and that's in the school district. So definitely be more vocal about your tax base, defend your tax base. If you see one of those freebies that are coming away to try to entice something in, if the benefit doesn't outweigh the enticement, definitely say this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this. And again, this is the same one, it doesn't cost anything. The third one is the county's largest employer. So understanding and leveraging yourself as the county's largest employer will also benefit your tax base in the long run. So we've got a median income in Grant County that's lower than all of the northern Kentucky counties. Reason being is because to induce certain industry, like your service industries, they want that median income a certain amount. The reason why we haven't got a steakhouse, a big chain steakhouse in Grant County, is because they want to know the people that are going to be paying the tab can afford the tab. So if our median income isn't raised, then it's not going to come. So, in Grant County schools, that's one of those things. If you look at it and say, hey, if we can afford, by doing these steps, to be able to pay our employees more as a large county employer, we're doing our business by working hard to get that median income up. Then that median income will fuel more future growth. That also spurs on more economic development. That thus builds the tax base. So it's a vicious cycle. You can look at that. In this case, it would be a good cycle. But right now, we're kind of on the vicious cycle of things. And then the fourth one is to leverage the technical school to help your tax base. So I love the college and career ready. That's great. Not all kids are going to go to college, and that's a good thing. So we need to use our technical schools by partnering with Dana, Kim and Steele, Napoleon, and St. Elizabeth to get them people that's ready to go. That way we need to go and recruit for industry to come into Grant County and say, this is how many welders we just graduated at Grant County High School. Or we look at St. Elizabeth and say, this is how many CNAs that we can give you for your hospital that just came out of our technical school. This is how many auto body manufacturers that we have, how many skilled workforce that we have. So that's A, one, once we partner with Dana, Kim, and Steele and those, it helps us retain them. And B, it helps us recruit others to come in. So that way we know we can build that industry, that commercial footprint to the tax base to grow it, while also giving our graduates an opportunity to say, hey, here's a job at Dana, here's a job at Kim and Steele, here's a job at St. Elizabeth Healthcare, to get them their foot in the door. So it fuels that tax base growing. It also, at the same standpoint, if you partner with St. Elizabeth Healthcare, those jobs have higher than our median income. So that again builds that up for the county to be able to grow and succeed. So just to kind of recap, we went over this information of myths with the tax base, specifically the ARC, bourbon barrels. We talked about the rise in property assessments and the seed funding and how that basically, that teeter-totter didn't work in our unique instance, so we're actually losing money, and then also we went over 4 solutions for the district. Here's my contact information if y'all need anything. Don't hesitate to reach out. Yeah, if you want to come and see that, I can share that with the district. You can take a copy from my flash drive, or I can get your email address and I can send it to you as well.
Mr. Anderson, on your slide there that you mentioned, showed the school is already doing. We've been established and working with students in this building through CTE since 2011. And that was one of the main goals of Mr. Mike Davis, the superintendent of Robert Tech Center and our schools. The problem that we have, where we're not as successful as we should be with that particular slide that you showed, is the fact that we have a lot of 16 know, as a lot of us sitting in this room, I'll speak for them and they can shoo me away in a moment. Parents start these kids out of school so early, they graduated 17 years old, and it's a struggle on our behalf to employ them. I teach the electrical classes here at Green County High School. I teach ocean, construction industry training for all of my students. And, I cannot employ you until we have reached your 18th birthday. So, all the restrictions that government, we'll just say, that'll keep it nice, has put upon restricting us to do our jobs. You know, I feel like if you informed us, and I appreciate that, but that is something that this school system has done for the past 12, 13 years. And we've done a damn good job at it, excuse my French, putting our kids out there to go to work. You know, problem is, why we can't employ some of our students in Grant County is because they're not willing to pay what the neighboring counties will just say up north do. You know, so when we do this buy-in, I don't know that you'll find a teacher sitting in this room tonight that is not bought in 110% day in and day out. I look forward to coming back on August 12th. I can't believe I said that out loud. But I miss my kids. I miss my colleagues. I miss everything about the school system. I was the most die-hard electrician you would ever find before I walked into this job. So we need the county to embody us as bad as they need us to get out there and put a product on the road or on the street or whatever. I can't employ a student at the city of Williamstown now because they got restrictions. I used to have a kid that go to work in the electrical department. Work side by side, rain and day. Can't do it anymore. What changed? Don't know. They didn't tell me. You know, trust me, when we put our CTE kids, we got some of the best in the state. And we put them out there to go to work, I know that they're gonna do a great job for you. But we just don't have that commitment made very many. We have a small group of businesses in Grant County when we start to compare north, south, east, west, you know. It is tough, but, I would like to see feedback on that from somebody, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we're not training kids to go up there and sweep the back of your car out, we're training kids to install electrical, we're training kids to build welding, you know, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, and I feel like, you know, that slide kind of poked the bear.
Well, I mean, it's not just saying electrical.
No, it's across the
I mean,
board. We got some of the best biomedical health science kids,
Yeah.
pre-engineering, I mean.
Yeah.
And it's the same way in medical science.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get kids able to go there before
Government, that's the problem with a lot of it.
Well, it could also be the work, what they're, what the work is requiring, and what kind of requirements they're willing. I
Drug
mean,
tests,
I can't speak for Dana, but they're always looking for people. They were bossing me.
I would say
So, I mean,
I worked in there. They feel
Hey, again, we can't limit ourselves, right? Advanced manufacturing, right? We can't, if we start picking and choosing, then that number, that small number you said, wins even more, right?
And it's the same way, Dane, I can't put a 17-year-old to work inside of a facility. I'll try. And it won't take, and I mean, restrictions are restrictions, you know what I'm saying? It's just to stop the problem, you know, stop the things that, that's what. I mean, what happened? Did you start working in the tobacco field when you was 10, 12 years old?
Yeah, I started working at Bruce's before.
Yeah, now,
Yeah.
you drive they'll stop on the road, come out in the field, and ask you why there's a kid out there working in that field.
So one thing you can do, if you got one last year, you can put it in a apprenticeship.
Amen.
Like that's Toyota's got a great apprenticeship program for maintenance. We had one last year,
Yeah, that's what we told me.
Yeah.
17 years old.
Seventeen.
Plus
Yeah.
you're in school for 2 years.
Yep.
So that's stuff we need to push. The kids that's not going to college, They've got to take the background, get them into a apprenticeship program. We had a free apprenticeship program.
Why are our contractors in town? They need help.
Neighboring counties have a lot of business, industrial, what I call it, that has great apprenticeship programs, and they do a superb job putting on kids to work. And they're appreciative of what we have. But then the problem is we gotta figure out a way to keep them in the county. Because everybody has a big city job, and they don't wanna live in Grant County. I've got a son that, he's a yard doctor, he does not wanna live in. That's what we gotta do, we gotta make it more livable, kids, when they graduate, they wanna stay. So that has been smooth, so. But we gotta figure out a way to keep our kids, especially our kids.
And that's more of a broader problem.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, thank you. So again, we want to talk about, we want to hear your concerns. I appreciate all the good information. I learned a lot, and I'm sure you did as well. And I do think that here's what's going to happen is we're going to have conversations, ideas are going to be presented, somebody's going to take it, roll with it, have a conversation with somebody else, and before you know it, things will get clicking. That's the value of a conversation. Any problem worth solving is worth talking about. So that's why tonight is important to me, because we're together talking, and it may not be that we come up with all the answers in the next 48 hours. But if we keep the conversation going, some great ideas are going to be generated, because no one of us is smarter than all of us. So I do want to open up the mic. If anybody would like to come forward and share any public comment. Again, our focus of this is how can we develop a strategy as a district moving forward that are outside of the improvement planning processes that already exist.
I can talk a lot about it. So I just have a question, I don't know if it's directed to you or board, but I have several nieces and nephews at high school, and I have gotten middle school senior. There is already a severe exodus of teachers. Several of my nieces and nephews were set in auditorium last year, and I'm concerned my middle school are going in. If we don't fill those positions, what is our
Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was fully staffed.
At the high school at the moment, -1.
So we had two, we had two teachers who got county, and then we had a
Okay, so that's something that we're going to have to work on. I do want to give a little bit of backstory as to why students were sitting in the auditorium. Last year we had 5, I believe it was 5 mid-year resignations. And that throws your master schedule off. When I first came to the high school, one of the reasons cited that people were leaving the high school was teachers were having to get up their planning period every single day to cover another teacher's classes. So I tried to come up with what would be the best possible solution. Another impact is we do have important field trips that occur, and we have a subs shortage. So you compound those factors. You have high quality, valuable field trips, many times exposing our career and technical students to opportunities, getting them on the floor of the places where they can develop apprenticeships and works. I have some resignations that I'm not counting on mid-year. I have some flu go around, or a stomach bug go around, and then we're short on subs because typically I've had to use subs in so many different ways. So an approach is that we will do kind of like a blended situation where teachers would upload and then assignments in Google Classroom. We would provide monitors in the auditorium, and we would work the day out. We learned last year, freshmen don't handle that well. So, and seniors will check out. And here's the unique problem with the senior. Senior may have several career and tech classes throughout the day, to where if they're on a field trip, then they were in several hours a day. So there's some refinement work to do. We may have to go back to limiting, may have to be more inclusive in coverage by a certified teacher. If we can get staff, that's hurdle number one. If we cannot lose staff mid-year, that's hurdle number two. What we did then, how we adjusted mid-year, is we tried to avoid putting freshmen in the auditorium. So anybody that we could get in a classroom, whether it be a curriculum specialist, an assistant principal, I taught a math class poorly several times, I apologize. To anybody's child that was in that, but in an English classroom, I'm much happier. I taught band several days, and that felt great. So, that is, there's some work that we have to do, but I absolutely agree. Nobody feels good, including myself, about parents sending their kids to us for them to sit in an auditorium for multiple hours during the day. So again, I think we had, at this point, fewer turnover than we did the previous 2 years. You're talking about between this year, last year and this year? She lost 2 of them during the year? Yes. I can't predict that, and those are for various reasons. So, we had 2 people leave teaching altogether. The changes that we have made that I feel good about is I do think it's a different culture at the high school than when I first started. And so I do think the teachers have more collaborative time. Their time is protected. So they did have a PLT that they brought their data and they tackled their problems alongside with principals and curriculum specialists. I feel like they felt more supported throughout the year. I do feel like, again, protecting their time. I tried to minimize the after-school requirements that I expected of them. I tried to increase proficiency. Of course, I'm stepping away, so that's being handed off, but I feel very good that Dr. Murphy will continue those things.
I'd like to piggyback on Ms. Parker's question a little bit there, because you asked about vacancies. There's a big difference between filling vacancies quality, so that you don't end up with the situation you just described, where people would leave in the middle of the year. You also said about turnover. You showed a slide earlier that showed high teacher turnover in the last 2 years for the whole district. So, do you think you have a teacher turnover problem when salaries competitively around you, everywhere around you, north, south, east, and west, are greater than the field?
I would say definitely yes. We have a problem. So, we have seen the explanation of our funding issue. So we have a SEEK problem, so a SEEK funding problem. We have a budget that had to be passed in May, and so if we were to do any type of creative influx of money, well, that would affect jobs at this point. So I don't want to take away jobs, and can't take away jobs at this point. So what I want to focus on is how can we do the things that have been presented to increase revenue? How can we try to search every possible avenue for an increase in funding, but also how can we show value of our employees that, as Mr. Shaver said, show up every day and give their best?
I'll stand by. I worked there for 21 years. Look, you led off with the status of the schools and student performance in reading and mathematics. And one of the ways you're going to change that is higher quality teachers. And I feel like
number one way is teacher efficacy. That's the number one driver.
And I feel like, I think most people here probably know my story. I know most everybody in the room. But, I feel like you're going to lose that talent, and you get a talent drain, and because you're not training, and what, the way the retirement system works is different, good thing too, but that's something that's got to be addressed somehow, some way. And so, in getting all the information that was gotten here, do we have a plan to attack our representatives, our state representatives, state senators, to let them know you're an elected official to represent us in this community, and this community is suffering because of the way it's written at the state level?
That's part of my responsibility.
That's part of my responsibility as the superintendent, but it's also part of your right as a citizen of the county. So I encourage everyone to exercise that right and be in communication with their elected officials as well. So I wanna do committees based on the data and the people that it affects. So I wanna get some more input, I wanna use the survey results, but I wanna have committees that if it involves, climate and culture of the district, that we have representatives from all, so that it's not just teachers, or it's not just classified, so that we have an equal disbursement or representation from the employees. And then it depends on the topics that we wanna tackle. But I can't determine the committees until I determine what problems we as a collective want to tackle. And then there'll be an invitation process to that. That's a great question.
I think it's a bigger problem than going back to what Brad said. I have a son who graduated from here 6 years ago. If I think of him and his classmates, the majority of them did not protect. My son refuses to come back here. He does not want to hear there's nothing for him. Okay? So, yes, our school is suffering, but at the same time, like Brad said, we're losing the future. Because they want to go north or south or east or west, where there's no school there. So, I think we have to focus on it as a Grant County, not a Grant County school problem. It's a Grant County problem. Because we want the best and brightest from our school system to come back here with raise their children and be part of our community. But right now, that is not happening.
I appreciate that. I will say from a school perspective, it is very important to me that they leave having had very rich, good experiences within the school. And I think that it's okay for people to go if that's what they desire, but I always want them to feel home when they're here, and it's possible that at some distant future, they will return and provide back to their community. But I appreciate that. Other comments?
How is our, bus drivers employees, I know you showed the number, are we gonna have limited routes again this year?
As of today, it's my understanding that we will be able to run all routes.
I don't know if that information, but you know how many teachers are currently opting 6, opting 9, emergency side?
I do not know off the top of my head, I can research it for you. We have looked at that. One of the things that has to be addressed with that is you still have to have a certain number of seat time hours. The other thing is that an undue burden on families that work?
It is. It is. Sitting here with 3 littles, it is. It might be, but it has shown increased teacher retention.
Yeah, we've taken a look at that, we can always take another look at it, but there are some limiting factors on that. So every decision has both intended and unintended consequences. Sure?
I don't know the answer to this. I know that Carroll County now offers virtual options. Obviously, that's not what we want. But if that got more homeschool students back into the curriculum somehow, how does that affect the money situation, people, all of that?
So I think that's something we're gonna examine for a year. If we do it, we wanna do it right. And we didn't, wanna do it last minute. So I've already had discussions, with my chief academic officer, and then we're gonna take a look at studying that and see if that's feasible, and find a good model so that we can ensure that we're doing quality work through that.
Obviously, that's not technically what we want.
Right.
But if that gets more money into the building.
That speaks to Mr. Ellington's point of how can you be attractive to our current homeschool population to provide possible, other, avenues for them? Yes, ma'am.
But I will say, like, the child officer, students at Newport schools, things got moved up in Newport, very recommended. And they opened an innovation school in Newport. It is amazing. Like, I would stand behind it completely. It was meant for high school side kids. Kids that, in the poor neighborhood, they had to work because their parents couldn't afford to do the bills. You had kids that were bullied, didn't feel emotionally and mentally safe in the school. And it was a virtual-based school, but they still are counted as students in the school district.
Yes,
It has helped Newport tremendously.
That is totally doable. So that's a good model that we can take a look at. I appreciate that.
I'll say one thing about the virtual school thing. It does exactly what you're saying. It gets the kids in the school enrollment. It also gets their test scores and test score enrollment on the report card too. So if you are careful on how you implement it, you're gonna, one of the test scores, if you get, put subpar education from it. So it's important what you said if you're gonna do it, to make sure that you produce a quality product, or it's gonna regulate it.
So kind of piggyback off that, where they went to the innovation school, they were required to come in to a facility, an office facility in Newport to do state testing. They were not allowed to do it at home. They didn't have to facilitate their tests inside the school.
Yeah.
Two questions. I'll start with the first, going back to C-1. We want students homeschool, but they still use some sort of platform, I understand, through Grand County schools?
Not homeschool.
No, not homeschool, so that is so if he goes homeschool, he must provide his own curriculum and such like that.
And I will say that the bar is pretty low in the state of Kentucky for what requirements exist. And that's not to say that there's not high quality homeschool educations, but the accountability on the part of the person providing the homeschool is not very robust in the state of Kentucky.
Second question, and, I don't even know if this is a factor for you any longer now that you're enrolled in today. On visits where I've gone with my colleagues and things and principals to visit other tech centers around in our, we'll say, circle of county and monthly, there was a dress code amongst teachers and employees that did not mimic what Grand County standards were or was. Do you feel like that teacher retention might improve if they were able to, say, dress in a pair of jeans and a good old t-shirt every, 5 days a week or anything there? Not sure. Yeah, I'm kind of heading that over here.
I'll let Dr. Murphy handle that.
The attitude is, what else I'm looking for there,
All right, any other public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I did talk a few times, but what, if we can't do money this year, what other things can we offer to our teachers this year that make our schools something that other teachers, other districts are longing to come and visit, or come and be a part of, community-wise? What can we give our teachers outside of money that make it worth our while to be in these schools?
So I do think that there can be some increased flexibility from school to school. I do have some ideas that I want to share with the board, but I don't want to bring them up until I've had an opportunity to, I did meet with a representative from one of our benefit providers, and she gave me a list of schools that had people dedicated to exactly what you described. So tomorrow, day 2 of my job, I'm going to reach out to those schools and talk about their processes. And don't hold me to Wednesday to having the solutions, but we're absolutely going to explore. That's what I call the culture piece, right? And it's the value piece too. I will say that there is research that says, long research, that says that happiness is most directly impacted by meaningful relationships. And so we have to make sure that our relationships with students and our colleagues and our administrators and our community are meaningful and positive. I think tonight is a great first step, right? I think the best way to get close is to solve difficult problems together. Yes, ma'am.
It's one of those
aspects of teachers that you're going to look into, like the child care? I know that there was like meetings here at the high school for that, is that something that you're
That is certainly on the table. I've got some ideas that I want to present to the board, and we're doing some homework right now. We'll go here and then in the back. Right here.
One of the pieces of data you shared, one thing you can see, one of the pieces of data you shared is the 500 employees and digital insurance. Is that percentage involved with,
I will have to research that. I probably will start with those districts that our other data points were at, and I hesitate to give you an answer because I don't believe that it will be informed or accurate. So, somebody tell my wife that I didn't just give an answer. We had it back here.
One thing I'd like to see in terms of advocating for this district, when you look at schools that are about 30 miles south of us, 30 miles north of us, I know money, I guess you can understand that money is something that right now is not done easily. But one thing I can do that at least work towards is those schools are offering, I know our district does a really good job of technical and career ready, but I don't think we offer enough dual credit college courses. I know a high school 30 minutes north of here, if you look at their course catalog, they offer 48 classes for college prep. This school, I looked up on their website, it offers about 7. Their school district has about 6 or 7 college affiliates, which they bus their kids to the colleges. Our school doesn't offer that. So I really feel like it's kind of lost our college ready kids in this district, and it's something that I think we need to make sure we start focusing on kids that are college ready, not just curriculum.
Appreciate the feedback. I see Dr. Murphy shaking his head. So, valuable. Thank you. Any other feedback?
I also think, as you guys talk about, the community and that sort of stuff, like having a community partners is great. But I also think that you can't forget about the parents of those kids that are in your system. You've got site-based at all schools. I know Sherman has been trying to have more, they're trying to get more parent volunteers. But I think after COVID and the schools being shut down and not allowing parents to come in and do any sort of volunteer, I think the schools at Sherman are having a hard time getting those parents to partner back with the school to come in and volunteer so the kids, can see their parents interact with their, with their peers and do other things, and give those teachers the support that they need so that they can do other things. So I think that we need to make the schools a little bit more, not only more enticing for teachers to come in, for parents, for students, but for parents too. Because if we're not comfortable with what's happening in our school, we're not sending our kids there. We're gonna pull them out, we're gonna homeschool them, and then you're losing the funding that way. So I think you can't forget about the parents, because that is going to be, probably one of the biggest people that you need to reach first before you can start talking about some of the other pieces that will affect a lot of things. But if you don't have kids, you don't have funding, you don't have kids to send to the community, I think parents are going to be a good starting place.
Very much appreciate that.
Sort of piggybacking on what she just said, in MCE, it was about the same parents that volunteered for everything. One of the goals was, we went from, like a background check, you went for 3 years, then you get to do it every year. A lot of people, that is a state requirement.
Yes.
Yeah, but I could Kiwi ball around and have field back.
Way back in the back. Yes, ma'am.
As far as how parents can get involved, is there a way to look that up as far as the website, the Grant County website is super hard to navigate. So if there's a way that we're looking to get involved, like looking for all the meetings that we can come to, how do we look for those things?
I can take that back and we can work on that. I will say I would utilize your school pages first and communicate with your site-based councils. A lot of schools do newsletters, but I can also pass along to our principals too that there is a desire from parents to be informed on opportunities that would allow them to become increasingly involved. I can speak to the COVID impact. When I first got to Mason a few years ago, we had readers up and down the hall, people volunteering from the community, reading to our students, and it crushed people when we told them that there was restriction. That restriction no longer exists. As long as we have appropriate background check, I think we can re-embrace and become that single community again.
You should also reach out to your PTA,
Good
whatever
point.
it's called at your school, because they are, going to be the parents that are most involved and can help you with those volunteer stuff, and can get you in touch with the people at your school that need those volunteers and kind of get you set up that way too. So that is another, I would say one of the main resources at every school.
Good point. Lonnie?
Don't forget your Chris. They have, advisory councils that they have to have parent representatives on that's mandated by the state. It needs to be a part of making decisions on the program that they offer for your students in your school. And also, and forgive me if I'm stating the obvious, but in terms of advocacy, and I'm very mindful that I'm saying this as a room with elected officials, when you are advocating, I think it's very important to be mindful of the standards that your representatives hold. And I think that you really have to know how to craft your story in a way that is going to appeal to them. Like we've had a lot of discussion about how do we appeal to students when it comes to recruiting admissions. We have conversations with our state representatives. You really need to know how they feel about things first, I think, before you approach them, so that you can be strategic in how you have your conversations. That's all.
Okay. So I told you there would be a survey. So here is a QR code up on the screen that you can use your phone if you are so inclined. There's some specific information we're looking for included in the survey. And then, as I said, there was an open-ended. If you do not want to do this tonight, we are going to post the survey on the district webpage tomorrow. Is that correct, Danielle? Yeah. So that would be an option. You can find a link on the district webpage tomorrow to provide us with your feedback. And a third option is we will have paper copies and pens available to you if you would like to go completely old school. That's okay. And then we will make sure that all that gets collected. Again, the goal is to report the results by the end of August. I think we're at a point where we can come to a close. We will have one more of these. It'll be the same information. I don't know that Mr. Anderson will be available, but I might be able to share slides with his permission. Tell me the date on that again, Danielle.
The 23rd.
23rd of July, same spot, and we will review the same information. It was very important to me to get this work started day one, but I realized it being the week that it is, many of our families are probably traveling, so I wanted to try to spread those out so that we could reach a broader audience. Thank you so much for your input, for your concern, and for your passion for the future of Grant County. I look forward to working with you throughout the coming month.